Okay, so 6 years ago now, I was volunteering at a school in Kenya when I met a young girl who would completely change my life. This is Esther. Esther was 8 years old and she was incredibly smart, sassy. She bossed the boys around and she was the top of her class. And she talked non-stop about her dream one day of becoming a doctor. I adored her. So it was near the end of my time volunteering at the school that one of the teachers pulled me aside and said something that really upset me. Esther was going to have to drop out of school because the orphanage where she lived could no longer afford to pay her school fees as well as her brother's. And as I said, I was deeply upset when I heard this, and I immediately went to the principal and said, how much are these school fees? And it turns out that the school fees were about $100. And that covered not just the fees for Esther, but also her uniforms, books, everything she was going to need to stay in school for another year. So I was like, awesome, okay. Paid the school fees, and about a week later, I got on a plane and headed back to Australia, feeling pretty good about this thing I was going to be able to do, or did do, for Esther. And that was until I started to think about it a bit more. And as I thought about it more, I started to worry. And I started to worry because I realised who was going to pay for Esther's school fees the next year? And what about the year after that, and the year after that? And what about all of the other girls out there just like Esther? And so I started to do some research. And it turns out that, yes, Esther was certainly not alone. It turns out there are actually 130 million girls across the world that are currently not in school. And 2/3 of the world's illiterate are women. Without access to education, women and girls are caught in a cycle of poverty. They're 6 times more likely to be victims of child marriage and at far greater risk of trafficking and exploitation. But there is a flip side to this, and that's that with access to education, everything changes for women and girls. It's such a powerful force of change that it's often referred to as the girl effect. You see, with just one additional year of education, a girl's earnings will increase by up to 20% over her lifetime. And a child who is born to a mother that can read is 50% more likely to survive past the age of 5. And even a nation that educates just 10% more of its girls can increase its GDP by up to 3%. I became so passionate about this kind of amazing force of quality education that I wanted to do something about it. And so I was back in Australia and was thinking, could I start a charity or do some fundraising? And I realised that this was a problem that was so big and so important that it needed more than just donations, that it needed the power of business to create a sustainable, ongoing source of funding for girls like Esther. And so, business, I thought, I tossed around ideas and models and products, and eventually I settled on stationery. For me, stationery is something that we use for work, for learning, for writing down inspiration, ideas, goals, dreams, and there was so much synergy between that and education. So from there, Words with Heart, my company, was born. Words with Heart is an eco-print and stationery company that funds education projects for women and girls. We create all kinds of stationery products, things like business cards, notebooks, postcards, wedding stationery, just about every and any single thing you can think of that is made with paper. Every single purchase funds female education, and we partner with some of the world's leading NGOs, with grassroots organisations working across Africa and Asia, funding projects, not just primary and secondary education, but also things like business skills and financial literacy. And we produce all of our products sustainably using 100% recycled paper, green electricity, and eco inks, creating this dual environmental impact. So our business model is pretty simple, but it's powerful. We make stationery, products that we all use every day, and we do it at the same cost and the same quality as any other stationery product, but we have this real and measurable impact. So as an example of how this works, let's take this notebook. Some of you might have one of these in your hands right now. We created 500 of these for ING as part of the Social Good Summit. And just by making a simple business purchase, ING were able to save 35 kilos of wood, 514 litres of water, 64 kilowatts of energy, and also fund 500 days of education for women and girls. It's pretty cool. Yay, thank you, ING. So since launching as part of ING Dreamstarter back at the end of 2014, we've created tens of thousands of print products just like these, working with some of Australia's biggest corporates, with small businesses, startups, and just passionate individuals. To date, we've saved tens of thousands of units of wood, water, and energy, and also funded over 100,000 days of education for women and girls across the world. So as we near 2030, our big audacious goal, is to fund 1 million days of education for women and girls in the next few years. So we're just a small business, as maybe you can see, and I am just one person, but I'm a big believer in small people, small businesses being able to create big impact. And one of the most significant ways that we can do this is to partner with big companies and help them to utilise their business spend to create real and meaningful impact. Social procurement partners like ING have been invaluable to Words with Heart, and this excitement about the social procurement space and all the possibility that it brings is only growing. In Australia alone, it's said that the social procurement market is a $600 billion social change opportunity, which to me is incredibly exciting. It's, whether you're talking about eco-stationery like us that funds, education for women and girls, or making the decision to purchase recycled toilet paper that helps to fund hygiene projects, or choosing an event catering company that trains and employs women from marginalised backgrounds. It's these simple decisions to make a business purchase with a social enterprise that bring along benefits that will help us achieve, I believe, all of the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. So the other thing I've noticed in my own experience is that these simple decisions start with just one person, just one internal champion in an organisation. It's this one person that's incredibly passionate about making a change in the world, and they then have this one decision to have a conversation with one decision maker in a business to make a purchase from a social enterprise. And that passion, I have learned, is incredibly infectious. So if I can leave you with one thing that you can do to make an impact in the world, it would be to do something small, to make a connection for a social enterprise, to buy from a social enterprise, because it's these things, I think, that will help us see a better, brighter, more equal 2030. Words with Heart is committed to changing the world for women and girls, one notebook at a time. Join us. Thank you.